Good evening. I'm Rebecca Ende Lichtenberg, Studio Theater's Managing Director, and I want to welcome you to our final inside look of the 2021 season. Normally, these inside looks would be in person, we'd be in a room with our artists, but we thought it was really important that we find a way to pivot these to being online so that we could give all of you a backstage look at our artistic process as we go through the season this year. We are really thrilled to be presenting our fifth and final digital production, Tender Age. We are so grateful that all of you have stuck with us through this pivot to a totally new medium as we've been producing in this digital format all throughout this virtual season that we've been doing. Of course, when we come back to the theater, we are going to be welcoming you back to a renovated building. I think most of you know that this is our first renovation project in over 15 years. I'm excited to share that demolition is almost done, and we're moving into construction. The project is on schedule. And when we are able to welcome you back in December, we are going to have a brand new, totally flexible, state-of-the-art theater on the ground floor, which we will be calling the Victor Sharguy Theater after our dear friend, Victor Sharguy. We will have expanded and new public spaces, a cafe, upgraded HVAC. It is very exciting and we can't wait to share it with you. This is typically the moment where I would be introducing our artistic director, David Muse, to introduce our artists and lead us in conversation. David is actually not with us tonight. Some of you may know that David, a week ago today, welcomed a new addition to his family. So he is home with a week-old baby. And so instead, I'm going to be introducing you to our literary director, Adrien-Alice Hansel, who is also our in-house dramaturg. She is a facilitator extraordinaire and is going to be leading us in conversation with her artists tonight. And she has also been in rehearsal with our artists, actually in person at studio for the past 2 weeks. So I think there's not a better person to introduce our artists and lead us in conversation. So with that, I will hand things over to Adrien-Alice.
Hi, thank you so much, Rebecca. So I am here. This is for those of you who've been in board meetings, have been onto the site up to the third floor of Studio Theater. I am literally coming to you post-rehearsal from Studio Theater. And I'm joined here by George Brant, who is our playwright for Tender Age. So just a quick introduction to him, and then George, I will ask you questions. You know the answers.
Very good.
So some of you may know George's work from Grounded, which Studio produced in 2018, ironically when I had a 1-week-old, so I missed opening night for that show. Grounded has been seen all over the world. George is currently working with Jeanine Tesori, whom some of you may remember is the composer for Fun Home, a show we canceled and hope to do in the future. So he's developing that with the Metropolitan Opera. He's had written a bunch of other wonderful plays, very different from each other. Elephant's Graveyard, Into the Breaches, The Mourner's Bench. Some of you may also have seen his play Maria and Rosetta, which was at Mosaic Theater Company in 2018. So that's George. So just a little bit on you and your background. I know, because I've done research on you to write about you, that you came to writing as an actor. And I would love for you to talk just a little bit about anything you want to share about your acting career, but also anything about that transition, like how did it happen? And also maybe what skills from your acting life do you bring into your playwriting?
Right, sure. Well, first off, thanks for having me. This has been a great, I guess we've only been here a week and a half of rehearsal, just about 2 weeks of rehearsal, but we've gotten a lot done and things are moving in a great direction. I did start out, I think, acting being the entry drug for most of us in the theater. Did acting in high school, and then at Northwestern, that was my major as well. And while at Northwestern, I did kind of move into more writing, both for I was going to say for the improv group, but that sounds like a joke. But there were, sketches within the improv group that did writing for. And then my junior year, a friend of mine put up on the call board that he was looking for somebody to adapt King Kong for the stage. So I took him up on that. So I think he wrote Act 1 and I wrote Act 2. and we staged it on the smallest space on campus, Shanley Pavilion, which Henry is very aware of, who's coming up. So that was kind of, I enjoyed both those experiences. And after graduating from Northwestern, moved into Chicago, and really assuming that that acting would be my primary mode of expression. And then I, like most actors, I kind of felt like I wasn't getting the parts I wanted or that I deserved. So I was like, maybe I should just write something for myself. So it all started very selfishly, this writing career. And I thought of what is the cheapest, simplest thing I could write for myself. And I remember that play Love Letters, the A.R. Gurney. So I did kind of a satire of that, added a mailman. So we did have three.
The play was asking for it. So
Exactly. You're begging for that mailman. There was a mailman ballet. A dream ballet came up in rehearsal today. I have had a dream ballet. So that was staged in the basement of this Cafe Voltaire, this coffee shop in Chicago that asked for no rent. They just, I think, asked to be able to serve coffee and food during the show. So that was kind of the start of things. And also acting in, normal plays. I was still writing. And then over time kind of built up an ensemble of actors for the plays I was writing, and so kind of eased myself out of the acting chair at a certain point. And then at another point met my now 20-year wife, Laura Kepley, who is a much better director than I am. So I pushed myself out of that chair, because in the beginning I was, doing it all of the writing, directing, everything. So then I just ended up postering. I was postering and writing at that point. And then kind of the writing seemed to kind of take prominence over the acting side of things. And then I went to grad school at UT Austin in the Michener program there, because I really hadn't, formally studied playwriting, and I probably figured I might as well do that after a while. So so at that point, then that was when I kind of officially, in my mind, became a writer. But as you say,
mastered the art.
Oh yes, exactly. Once I mastered
it.
But I think I'm kind of in the nothing is wasted school of thought. I mean, I think all your experiences, count for something, and I feel that the acting side of things, has really influenced my writing quite a bit. I mean, I think a great part of why I write is just to try to write great parts for people. So I'm still trying to do that. And I definitely, as I'm writing something, if I kind of feel like if I can't act the line, then it's not ready yet, So I feel like, that maybe I'm just, justifying it, but it feels like my time was not wasted.
No, right. You endeavor to be the kind of playwright that turns actors who wouldn't otherwise be playwrights into playwrights. Like, they all love the parts. Right. They're not getting this down.
Right, exactly.
Well, to shift a little into your writing, and maybe if you want to talk about Tender Age specifically, but if that's easiest. But I'm curious also, having read your plays, which have really span tonally, have a lot of breadth, but I feel like are very interested in some kernel of history or real life, contemporary, something sort of expanded imaginatively into spaces where they're asking really interesting ethical questions, where they're really pinpointing something that maybe isn't apparent in the story itself, the ways that you expand them with your imagination. I'm curious though, like, how do you know something might be a play? Like, how do things start in you?
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, because there's a lot of topics and historical figures that I wanted to write about that I never quite found, the way in. And I mean, I just love like Scott Joplin. Like I love that music, but there's not all that much information about him, and so it's kind of hard to. And I didn't find that hook that got me in. Like Marie and Rosetta, Rosetta Tharpe was somebody I was interested in, and I think had I not, I mean, the hook with her was reading about how her singing partner Marie did her makeup at her funeral, and that she had done her makeup, that they did each other's makeup throughout their lives. Like that was like, oh, okay, now I can see, that moved me very much, that detail, and assumed it would move others, and that was kind of the hook with that one. So it's, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of plays on the cutting room floor. Never made it that far. Sometimes somebody gets to an idea before you do, and it's like, well, okay. Who was I speaking with? The Devil in the White City, that book.
Oh, right, we were talking about it.
Yeah, we were talking about it. Yeah, for a time, I kind of thought there was a play. Oh, yeah, it was just yesterday. Yeah, a play in there about all the historical figures who were at that, I think 1897 Chicago Exposition at the White City with Frank Baum and Henry Olmsted and I can't remember now the name of like America's first serial killer, but he was there, and all these people were kind of floating around seeing this, kind of mind-blowing exhibit that they had set up. So that was another one that I did a lot of research for it, but. So sometimes and then Terminal 1 was a play that I wrote about, maybe he's still there, the guy who was stuck in the airport in France and was living there. And then just as we were about to go into the first workshop of that, I happened to read that someone was making a movie of it. And I was like, oh, well, maybe it'll be a small movie. And then I saw Steven Spielberg, and then I saw Tom Hanks, and I was like, okay, well. But maybe enough time has passed that I can dust that one off.
Will come.
That one was fully written, sadly. So, and then Grounded, I mean, I think, in doing research for that, I also didn't know what the entry point was into that one until reading about the pilots, and the life they live, and the kind of strange, home war balance that they are asked to confront. So I don't know. Whenever I do have to find that hook though for myself, because you spend so much time working on these plays, that or a novel or any piece of art, but it does feel like, I mean, you have to really be interested in the subject matter, because you're going to be dealing with it for years and years and putting your heart and soul into it, and so you need to be. I think that's why stuff doesn't get written too. Is it just if you're just not feeling it, then that you can't fake it. As I have learned, you've got to genuinely be interested in the subject matter, deeply, deeply, deeply.
Yeah. Well, can you introduce us a little bit then I'm sorry, I'm totally putting you on the spot. The worst thing to do is to ask a playwright to talk about their play in brief. But can you just introduce us a little to the scenario of Tender Age, and then maybe talk about how you got your way into this particular story?
Sure, yeah. I mean, the quickest, synopsis would be, that it's about a security guard who gets a job guarding children who have been separated at the border from their parents, is the quickest synopsis. And then the longer one would be, actually what kind of started all of this was I read in the New Yorker this interesting article about these children who have come to Sweden as refugees, their family, and then once if they've lived in Sweden for a few years, and then they've been waiting to see if they would be granted full citizenship. And sometimes when they are denied full citizenship, the children in these families go into these near comas, basically, is the probably quickest way to explain it. And to which the point that they have to be, fed, through their nose, and their parents have to completely care for them. And so that was really interesting, and it was a really well written article too, I must say, that also kind of got me interested. And then I started to wonder, what if that were to happen here, and why should it only be in Sweden? It certainly is something that seemed like, particularly with our immigration refugee system, something that could happen. And so I started to kind of look at ways that might be expressed. And at first I kind of was thinking of the dreamers, and that not mainly, but partly because it went so well with the idea of, going to sleep. And I was like, oh, that's nice. But ultimately, as we then moved into, this was before, I think, the last administration, but as we moved further to that, the dreams became more of a moving target. It was very unclear when or if they were going to be granted, status. And I was like, well, if they, this could, by the time I finished the play, it may be already redundant. But then the child separation policy kicked in, and then pretty quickly after that happened, I thought, well, okay, this is something, a way to both, explore this idea and to explore that situation as well, and to kind of wonder, what if something were to happen, and are we prepared for that and prepared to deal with the consequences of it?
Well, and I think one of the things that I so respond to in so much of your work is the way that you also think your way into a person who discovers themselves in a situation that is like different than the way they've been describing it.
Right.
And discover themselves like deeply implicated in a situation they didn't know they were walking into. And I think especially the ask you make of us as an audience is to like not assume it's hypothetical. It's not a rhetorical question.
Right.
Actually, what are the pressures on you in the middle of a situation? We're going to invite Henry in a second.
Sure.
So warning Henry, but also George. But before Henry comes, so Henry is our director, and he'll be joining us to talk a bit about the process. But I just wanted to ask you, you worked on this first. You've been writing it for a while. You've been drafting it since at least 2018. What are like the two-ish biggest? What's changed the most in its time from mind to stage?
Right. Yeah. This one's, it's been interesting. I'd say the basic shape of it hasn't changed that much, I suppose, although, it's gone through many titles, as we were talking about the other day. It's maybe on its, I think, fifth and final title. I feel good about this one. It took a little while to find that. And there's kind of a weird phenomenon that once you think of a title, you kind of write the play towards that title. And so the previous drafts, I'd say, were written towards their titles a little. So when it was called The Beast at one point, it was kind of, it was a lot about this train that's called The Beast that the refugees, immigrants will jump on top of while it's running this freight train. It's kind of this horrific situation where, that's the quickest way to get across Mexico, basically, is to jump on these series of trains. So The Beast, I was really interested in that. And The Beast became the title. And then it was like, well, who is the Beast? Became a question, I think, that was over the play. And then, in time with that, I was like, well, this isn't really about the train. The train is an aspect of it, but we are in America. This isn't completely about that. So it's, I don't know. So I'd say little shifts like that. Then we did at the O'Neill, we actually tried out two different endings. That was probably the biggest. We had 2 nights of audiences there at the O'Neill after a week of workshopping the play, Henry and I. And so luckily we had with Henry a director who was flexible enough to go with a crazy idea bringing in, quite a few new pages on the day of, and luckily we had an actor in Carlo Alban who also was just really generous and flexible. I mean, he was really saintly to give that a shot in front of, paying customers to be reading these pages that he just got a couple hours before. So my thanks to both of them for making that jump with me, because that is the ending that we basically decided was the best. So so definitely I try to keep as open minded as possible and pay attention if something's nagging me that it's maybe not quite right yet. And so that the ending was definitely one of those things. And the ending, right now is still, we're still tweaking it. But it's kind of, I think it's settled on its base form.
Excellent. Well, we can talk more about the ending.
Yes, and for all things.
Well, when we bring Henry in, so let me bring on Tender Age director Henry Godinez. Hello.
Hello.
You can see also everyone has a look into two different studio apartments.
Yes,
both,
we're one floor away from each other.
Exactly. If anything really loud happens in one of them, you might hear the echo in the other's apartment.
Yes.
And I'm just going to do a quick introduction, Henry, so folks know some of what they're getting in
oh my goodness, okay.
So Henry Godinez is a director, resident artistic associate at the Goodman Theater, where he's directed many very interesting projects. So he's based in Chicago. He's a professor at Northwestern University, which is also where Annabelle, our assistant director and artistic apprentice this season, is from. So there've been lots of strong Northwestern representation. I'm just the outlier here. Also co-founder, former artistic director of Teatro Vista in Chicago, and has directed many, many new plays and also classics, and has many stories of amazing times as a film actor, as a stage actor, and of course as a director and professor, and is our fearless and wonderful leader here in our Tender Age rehearsal hall. So first, much as I asked George to give us a little introduction to his artistic past, just talk a little, I know you've done many beautiful things, but just a little about how you got into theater and how you came to be such a new play director in Chicago.
Wow. Well, first of all, hello everyone watching. Thank you for having me, Adrian. I actually literally got into theater when I was in high school because I hated being in a study hall. And my my little sister suggested that maybe I should take a drama class. She was in a drama class. She thought it was cool. And I just kind of immediately was like, whoa, okay, this is cool. And, I just kept studying theater all through high school, college, served 2 years as an apprentice at Actors Theater, which I know you did as well, and went to graduate school to study classical acting because I fell in love with Shakespeare, which is weird because I grew up this bilingual Cuban kid in Texas, so I did. And then I ended up in Chicago because I got cast in a kabuki adaptation of Medea that was directed by an incredible kabuki master, Shozo Sato. And, never left Chicago. I just kind of was fortunate to keep working as an actor. And then I helped start Teatro Vista, as you mentioned, and segued more into directing. And I love directing because it's what I love about acting is the collaborative experience, and what I love about directing is that you get to play all the parts and you get to play with all the people. And I've been very, very blessed, to call the Goodman my artistic home, and found my way into the Goodman when Bob Falls was taking over there and created something called the Artistic Collective. And basically, the Goodman felt very strongly that it should represent the city of Chicago. And so Bob assembled a group of people around him that were interested in creating work that looked like the city of Chicago. And I was very fortunate to be able to come into that. Yeah, and work with a lot of wonderful living playwrights like George.
And can you talk a little bit about like kinds of work you're drawn to as a director and as a programmer?
Sure. You know, the truth is, as a director, I'm drawn primarily to Latino plays, to contemporary Latino plays. You know, since we started Teatro Vista, it really, you know, these last 30 years have been about me sort of reconnecting, exploring my own cultural roots. As an immigrant, you know, my mom felt very strongly that we should be the proudest Americans possible, you know, and she raised us to be like the most patriotic Americans in America, and yet wanted us at home to hang on to especially our native language. So, you know, but culturally, I felt cut off from, you know, my roots because I was so young when we came to this country, and it really has been a really amazing, fortunate experience for me to be able to explore who I am and what my culture is, both specifically as a Cuban American and more broadly as a Latino in the United States. So I'm particularly drawn to contemporary Latino work and Shakespeare. So I'm kind of weird.
That's not weird. You like language. I hear you like language.
I think I like language. I think that's the common theme. Yeah.
And can you share a little bit about, so you worked with George on this play when it was at the O'Neill, the summer of 2019. And as we've talked a little bit, we're, you know, central in the support of finding this new ending of the play. But can you talk just a little about like what drew you to this play, what you see in this play that feels specific and new?
You know, I think also in relation to your previous question, I'm drawn to plays that are really deeply human. And I think when I first read this, I was like, oh my God, I know this person. I mean, I know this guy. He felt so human, and the dilemma that he finds himself in, the situation he finds himself in is so compelling and so human. You know, and I'm a dad and he's a dad, and I grew up in Texas. I felt that connection strongly because I'm Cuban, but I grew up mostly surrounded by Mexican culture. And so I was just struck by, and the language, you know, like you said, I am drawn to language, and George's play is so beautifully crafted. I wish that the audience could see it on the page, because to me, the way a play looks on the page is actually what initially draws me to it, you know? And it's just so beautifully and intricately put together. There's very little punctuation, and it's written. It looks like verse on the page.
Yeah, I've got that wiggle was me being like, let me grab my script. Actually.
Good, perfect.
I don't know how successful this will be, everyone. I can also help Monica out.
This is decide which page you show.
I just grabbed the page that had a little bit of my writing on it.
Yeah.
No spoilers, but so that's actually those are sort of long lines for the script.
Those are a little, yeah.
I mean, there are lines that are literally one word. There's many elements, linguistic sort of elements and conceits that Shakespeare uses, that poets use. There's repetition, there's alliteration, there's assonance, there's antithesis, all the good juicy things are in the script. But really, in the end, it's an incredibly compelling, deeply compelling and emotional human story, and an important one that is literally about what's going on today. And it makes people think, and that's the other thing that's important to me. You know, if you can make a difference with what we do, then, you know, life is good.
I'm going to ask you a couple questions just about making a filmed play. So, you know, if this were the 2021 we all imagined back in 2019, we would be in person. None of you would be in your homes. And we would be getting ready to invite you to, an official world premiere. We're calling this a new play just because there's no in-person part of it. It feels like George should have the opportunity to learn his play with people and with previews before we call something a world premiere. FYI. But it's a new play. No one else has done it.
No one has ever done it.
No one has ever done it. And also no one has ever done it this way. So I'm curious about both the frustrations are easy, I think, to imagine about what it's like to make a one-person show without the whole audience, which I think becomes the rest of the playing zone. I'm curious about any opportunities that you feel, any unexpected, oh, this is cool. This might not be better, but this is cool about making a film version of this work.
Yeah, I think it is cool. And luckily for us, I think that George's play really lends itself to it because there's only one character, and he, at many times, directly addresses the audience. And so we're striving to be crafty and placing cameras throughout the theater so that he can, at certain times, address the audience directly, like right to the camera, so that the viewer will feel, we're hoping that the viewer will feel that they're having the same experience they would have in the theater, except, there is that sort of intangible, beautiful thing about being in the theater and actually breathing the same air, which I know in the last year could be an issue. But I actually think that the play lends itself beautifully to that, and we've been saying in rehearsal that the cool thing is that the viewer will always have the best seat in the house, so you will never feel like, oh, there's that guy with the huge head sitting in front of me, or the hat or whatever, none of that. And so in a way, it's really kind of awesome. And the other thing that's really interesting about it is that Martin, in this weird world that he's in of an abandoned Walmart, a converted Walmart that was a detention center for undocumented children that now is abandoned, he's alone in this place. And whether that place has become his limbo, his purgatory, that's for you to decide as you watch it. But he's alone. And so ironically, when we film this, he will be alone, So the interesting, positive, cool things work both ways.
Yeah. And George, anything that you would add about, the discoveries of A, filmed theater, or B, just the discoveries of this particular process, this 2021 process?
Yeah. I think Henry and I are on the same page with this, happily, that I didn't enter it and I have to rewrite it, because of this. I think we both felt that it should still feel like a play, that it doesn't dive completely into film. And as you say, Henry, that, that it's just, you have the best seat, as the viewer, not that you, I don't know, have a crane shot from, I don't know. And so, so kind of embracing that. And then also with Bobby Moreno, our actor, I think also felt, he's like, I want to do it in one take. I want to, so I think we're all three of us really are on that same page, and probably all four with you, Adrian. But it should still feel like a play, basically. And we don't want to cheat too much, with that. I think it'll be really interesting. We're about to get into that side of things as we start rehearsing for the camera. But having that ability to really control where the audience looks to will be interesting. I mean, when you're seeing a play, you can look. You have freedom to stare at the corner if you want. But with this, you'll really be. I mean, we will in some ways be, controlling what angle you look at something, or so that'll be really interesting to see how that plays with things. So I'm interested to see what all of that contributes to this.
Yeah, one of the things we talk about at studio when we talk about our work is that we have an intimate, there's a sense of intimacy between the actor and the audience. And I feel like it is very intimate to have someone throw an aside like directly at you in a beautiful and unnerving way. And now you just get all of the asides as opposed to having to sit in the right place.
Yes, exactly. There's one moment in It's a Wonderful Life that I had a chance when I saw it on the big screen at the Music Box Theater in Chicago. There's the one moment where he gets thrown out of the bar towards the end. And he kind of looks out, what world am I in? And he's, increasingly panicked. And there's a moment where he, hits you, the viewer. And up on that big screen, it was really chilling to kind of feel like, oh my God, like it just felt like he was jumping out of the screen at you. And so ever since seeing that, I'm like, I think that gets underused in some ways, that feeling of audience. And there's one famous, Monica, one of the Ingmar Bergman films where the lead actress just in the middle of, apropos of nothing, turns toward the camera and just looks at us with a kind of accusatory check-in, and it's quite jarring, and it became like this famous shot, and I do think that I don't know, I'm excited to play with that aspect of things because I think there's plenty of mileage in there.
Yeah, it's like different than the Fleabag trick, but anyone who has watched the first two seasons,
right.
There's also a direct, which started as a play. There's this really interesting direct address, that feels casual until it feels meaningful. I love nothing as much as theater makers getting all the tools, including film if they're in it. Well, Henry, can you talk a little about, George, you sort of alluded to it, but where are we in the rehearsal process? So folks know, as they're thinking of questions, and just a heads up to all of you out there, in maybe 5 minutes or so, we'll take a couple questions. So formulate, put them in the text box. But Henry, where are we now?
Well, we're going in tomorrow. We have what's called the designer run, which is where we do a run through of the play, and all of the designers come and observe so that they know, where to focus their lights and how to time their sound cues. And in this case, the filmmakers will come, our videographers, video filmmakers will come, so that they can sort of understand, where the focus wants to be, where, how to cut back and forth and all those tricks that they employ. And then over the weekend, we continue to rehearse, and our lighting designer will be doing what we call writing over us, which I know sounds weird if you don't know what we're talking about. But basically, he will be playing with different lighting cues and looks while we work, and we won't be stopping. That will start happening on Tuesday when we go for real technical rehearsals, where we start literally employing and placing light cues and sound cues. And there we do stop and start a lot, and it can be quite tedious for the performer. But when you know that's what's happening, you bring an attitude of and it can be fun. Yeah, exactly. We all know what we're doing. And it's for a good cause, because then the show is put together, which it will be by Thursday, a week from today.
Let's hope, yeah.
There's no stopping the train now.
No stopping.
And that's when we will actually film it. But I love that, as George says, that Bobby's game for we're going to do our play. We're going to run through it and for the emotional arc of the piece, and we'll capture it. And then if need be, we'll capture a couple other little spots to, complement it. But yeah.
Yeah, we have 3 cameras, which is just a world of, I'll just say anyone out there, I mean, I think most folks who are watching this have seen some of our past work this season, but certainly it is a world of difference from like the VHS camcorder recording of the 8th grade play that you might be imagining. It's 3 cameras, and it's so the work that Studio Box, who are the folks who are video producers, have been doing has been really specific and like very different show by show. So yeah, it's like, it's so fun to see. Like,
yes, and if you've seen the other shows that have streamed, you know how high quality these filmmakers are. Amazing. So.
Sure.
One thing I'd love to touch on before we open up to other questions is a role I have not worked with, someone I haven't, like a person in a position, I haven't worked with before, but we've had a cultural consultant, like beautifully, on this project. Jacqueline Guillon, who is an actor, and she is from both Brownsville, Texas. I realized we haven't actually said this is a place set in Brownsville, Texas, on the Texas, U.S.-Mexico border, and she was from both Matamoros, Mexico and Brownsville, and I will say, as a dramaturg, it's just wonderful to not pretend to be an expert in a thing I know I'm not an expert in. But I wonder, actually, George, if you could talk first, maybe, and then Henry as well, just what it's been like having Jackie with us. She's in New York. She's been zooming in, but joining us for this process.
Yeah, I mean, I would really say it's been invaluable. I think having her there, having someone who actually grew up in the town the play takes place, and she still has family there, just really to be able to turn to somebody who's an expert on that, an expert on the day-to-day living, of the city, and how do people make a living there, and what are I don't know, what's the feel of the town, how hot is it? Just questions. And what is it like crossing the border there, as opposed to crossing it, in Arizona? And she was clearly an observant person because she seems to have an answer for everything that we throw at her. And then she's also been helping Bobby with his dialect as well. So on both fronts, really, I really am greatly indebted to her for what she's contributed to this, which cannot be overstated.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would just echo all of that. And on top of it, she's just such a delightful spirit and energy to have in the room. It just, immediately uplifts everything. But when you represent a culture, it's very, very important that you do it with integrity and authenticity. And I think that Jackie has been just tremendously helpful in making sure that we achieve that. Bobby grew up in Texas as well. Both of us grew up in Texas, but Texas is a big place, as Texans like to tell you. And, I grew up in Dallas, and Bobby grew up I think in the Austin area, and I spent a lot of time in the Austin area, but you're still 4 or 5 hours, maybe more, from Brownsville, and it's a very, very different culture there. And so, so all of the things that George said, including even what kind of music Martin might do, what those, just knowing what the town looks like is super helpful, and all of that.
Well, and the Brownsville specific Mexican Spanish, which is like every town's got its sound, and it's such a musical play, as folks will see when they have a chance to see it. And for folks who speak no Spanish, like, you are in beautiful hands, and the things you don't understand, you're fine. And for folks who do, and especially I think mostly for anyone who's got a Brownsville ear, the hope is that it sounds like home, because I feel like that's the easiest way to get for the off-ramp, right? Is for someone to be like, but we wouldn't actually, like, not false, but not us, is like such and humans are so specific, right? And how.
Yes.
So shout out to Jackie for beautiful and artistic work. Like, she really does have the sensibility of someone who knows what it takes to make a play. It can be like,
I think that's the other thing I was going to say, is that, she's, to have an expert who actually works in the theater as well is just completely bonus. So she gets what we're trying to do,
Yeah. It can be like, what's gonna sound right? Oh, it needs to end on this kind of sound.
Right,
Like to be able to really, I think, partner with you, George, as someone like to share
Exactly.
your ears.
Yeah.
Well, we have some questions from the audience, and again, I invite y'all to continue to send them in if you're out there on YouTube. And here's the first one. Which, I think I'll send to you first, Henry, but ask you both to reflect on if you'd like to. What is it like working on a play with such a difficult subject matter? How do the artists in the room support each other? Made a really beautiful space, Henry. So,
thank you. Well, I as I have said, in rehearsal, I don't know any other way to work other than in a collaborative way. And it's a wonderful room in that way. You, Adrien, George, Annabelle, Bobby, we're all after the same thing, which is to realize this play as beautifully and profoundly as possible. And I think that one of the things that has kept us sane with this subject matter is, well, a couple of things. One, to know that we are, as I said before, maybe making a difference, maybe educating people a little bit, making people a little bit more aware. Educating is such a scary word, I should use that. But making people aware about something and getting them to think about it. But the way that we keep saying is also by giggling a lot and laughing a lot. And there is a lot of humor in the play. You should know that. And that's one of the brilliant things about the play is that it, a little bit of sugar makes the medicine go down, someone said once. And I think that that's true about this play. There's a lot of humor in it, and we like to giggle and be silly, and then work really hard. So I think those are the things that have helped. Yeah.
And I'd say outside of rehearsal too, like I make sure I don't watch anything too heavy on TV when I get home, because it's just like it's so true. I have been watching a lot more comedy than usual. I think at night I'm just like I just kind of want to laugh. Like I don't like. I think we've put in our 8 hours or whatever working on the play, and it's like okay, it's time to laugh now, so you can be ready for tomorrow.
Exactly.
Right. Well, and I think one of the things when we talk about the play, when we do, and certainly as I was prepping research for the play, I was like, here are the reasons to watch this particularly depressing Netflix documentary, and here are the reasons to make sure you're ready for it. Here are the things that are in there.
Yes.
And I think that I think the play and our room both encourages that sort of.
Well, also, if I might just kind of speak about Adrien for a second, that one of the brilliant things about Adrien and one of the great, things about her as a dramaturg is that people may not know what a dramaturg does, but they're invaluable, addition to the team that is putting the play together, because not only does she provide us with all kinds of background information about, themes and things in the play, we can sort of just start discussing things in rehearsal. And one of the things that's amazing about Adrien in particular is that then at the end of the day, we get an email with all kinds of links to all kinds of things that we've talked about. And it's amazing. I mean, so you end up with this kind of incredibly well-balanced, three-dimensional feeling about working on the play. And it really does make a difference. You can feel how the play becomes fuller and more and richer because of what Adrien provides us. So
I will be giving you your $5 later, and I thank you.
I'll take it.
And this is maybe a last. I'm going to offer this up as our last question. It's a question about creating the world, the physical world of this play. And the specific question is just what's the set? What does that look like? And I'm so sorry I have no pictures for you all. You will have to, you'll have to come watch the show. But maybe Henry, you could talk a little bit about the work that Jeff has done, you and Jeff together. And I know George did a lot of that research as well.
Right. Well, I mean, Jeff, and forgive me because I'm spacing on his last name right now, but he's in the production office there. Technical director, I think.
Yeah.
Production. We have a Martin. We have a Jeff Martin.
We do. Jeff Martin.
Jeff Martin. How could I forget? Thank you. Hello, Jeff Martin. Jeffrey Martin, who designed this set, And it's brilliant because it is basically a cavernous space, as cavernous as that small space can be. If you've been there, you can imagine. But we've stripped everything away, including the deck, and he put in these pillars. Pillars isn't the right word. I-beams, I guess they are. They look like metal I-beams that are painted blue at the bottom and white at the top. So you immediately get that it's an abandoned Walmart, converted Walmart that was converted into a detention center, and that in turn has been deserted. So it's a big deserted space with a few little things that were left behind in the hurry. In our imaginations, they were like, all right, we have to empty this place tonight before the sun rises, right? They pull up the semi trucks and everything is just frantically being loaded and taken out, but like an old crappy file cabinet that was left behind, and a crappy old stool, and maybe a broken bed frame, and little things that add to the feeling that this was a hurried evacuation of a converted Walmart, but that also theatrically gives the actor some architecture to interact with, to sit on, to utilize. So it's really an amazing and brilliant design that Jeffrey Martin did for us.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's so open to what light can do to it, and what different camera angles are going to open up to it. It's exciting, and it's exciting. I also say it's one of our first realized sets of the season. Exciting.
It's pretty cool.
Well, we are at 6:51, so I want to thank George and Henry. I want to thank you both for. It's been amazing to work with you also, but thank you for your time at the end of a day of rehearsal and before we go into our design run tomorrow. So I really appreciate the time you've offered to us.
Absolutely.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you.
And now it is my great pleasure to turn the reins over to Blanca Beckham, who's our Director of Development, who's going to just offer a few final words for the evening.
Hello, everyone. I just get the pleasure of thanking you for joining us this evening. I also want to extend my thanks to Henry and George for taking time out of a really busy and very different rehearsal schedule and process to share such insights. We really just appreciate your taking the time. This is the first time we've done an insight look before the production, so hopefully it will encourage, entice, and intrigue you all to join us in about a month or so when it opens on July 1st. I also would like to thank you for joining us and you taking the time as well. I know this is all very different, so again, my thanks to you for joining us this evening. And I always, as on behalf of Studio, would love to thank our season this year. So I will just like to extend a special thank you to Susan and Dixon Butler, Mark Epstein and Amaretta Hober, David and Jean Greer, Arlene and Robert Kogod, Albert Lauber and Craig Hoffman, Joan and David Maxwell, Teresa and Dan Schwartz, Bobby and Ralph Turkowitz, Amy Weinberg, and Norbert Herrnstein. And of course, there are many, many, many donors and supporters who are really keeping this season vibrant and vital and helping us do it, making it possible. So thank you to all of our donors who've been standing with us this year while we experiment and do something new and have a lot of fun doing it at the same time. But as Rebecca said at the beginning of our evening, this is our last Inside Studio for this season, but we look forward to returning to these events and these artistic engagements for our 2021-2022 season. And we look forward to being back in person at 14th and P, and hope you will continue to join us for these insights into all of our productions that we have planned for you. You'll hear more about those when we announce those in September. We'll be planning them in the summer and look forward to bringing them to you in person next time. I want to thank you again for joining us this evening, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your night. Thank you again for joining us. Bye.